if you have questions, comments, I'll take 3. So, but they happen to be from South Africa, 2 of them. I need to choose. Okay, so can I take from that
quickly,
table?
can we have the microphones in the audience?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll take from that table. I'll take from this table, and then Diana there. Yeah, so sorry. Yeah, so a gentleman there, a lady there.
So the
and
trick
another
is, the brief, we make our submissions, the possibility, we have to take more than 3. If one starts with a presentation, then we won't reach 3. Okay.
So yeah, the MP from South Africa. So if you could just, all of you, could just quickly introduce yourselves, and then let us know who you want to address that question or comment.
Thank you very much. My name is Visvan Reddy. I am an African. I'm from South Africa. I'm a member of parliament representing the Umkhonto weSizwe party. Thank you for this opportunity, and I think it's a great eye-opener for us, because the story that you talk about is a story that affects South Africa directly, and it is an issue that we are taking up in Parliament. Do you know that when we achieved our democracy, we inherited a debt from the apartheid government? And it made me think about this, because somebody spoke and said that they call this the colonial government debt in Africa. And somebody else said, this shouldn't be another talk shop. And I think where we're falling short here is identifying who is holding the keys to reparations in Africa. And from everyone that's talking, we are saying what the problem is, but nobody is saying who is the cause of the problem. Once we identify that cause of the problem, I think all of us in Africa must stand united and demand reparations for the continent as a whole. Now, when I say who, where do we get these loans from? They come from the World Bank. They come from IMF. They come from all these great institutions in the West that have been funding Africa, but more importantly, creating geopolitical instability in African countries. Let's identify that. In every country where there's been instability in the government, it's being fueled by Western influence. And unless we don't stand united as Africans and deal with the elephant in the room, we will continue having talk shops. So I want to suggest that what we should do, arising from this conference, is that we need a team that we can put together that will be an action team. A team that will say, these are the 10 points that we want all African states throughout the continent to stand united, and let's champion this, set timelines, and let's start making demands. The truth of the matter is some of our African leaders are themselves captured. If you look at some of our African countries today, some of our leaders are captured by Western monopoly industries, and they're being paid by them so that they can continue destabilizing our province, our continent. And the way for us to really deal with this is within our own political systems in our various countries. Thank you for the opportunity. I think it's an excellent, excellent opportunity to be able to put a telescope to what the real issues are that's affecting the African continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So I'm sure the organizers, Aphrodite, are taking notes. These are more reflections. Yes, please, Diana. If you introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, Martha. Good afternoon. My name is Dina Msindarezo. I am Pan-African feminist, consultant, and facilitator. Thank you so much to all the speakers of this afternoon. My question goes to my comrade, Dawn. So you spoke about different legal frameworks at different levels. Specifically, my question concerns the framework at the international level, some of which, if not all, have been adopted in the period of, when the colonial administrators were actually in power, such as the UN Human Rights Declaration. But even the recent ones are also being adopted in a context and environment where we know that, again, there is a global system of power imbalances whereby the shaping and influencing of those frameworks are actually coming from somewhere else. Do you really see, in your opinion, those kind of frameworks playing a big role in liberating Africa? Thank you.
Thank you, Dina. So let's finish the questions and interventions here. There is a table here. And then Dawn, you will respond to that later. Let's see if the next intervention is for you as well.
Thank you. I'll just go straight to the point because Honorable asked one of the questions. So my name is Dinansi Saibo. I'm a civil society actor from Cameroon. My question is, how can African regional institutions like the African Development Bank better support member states in negotiating debt through reparation lens?
Thank you so much. Okay. Yeah, so Dawn, maybe you can start from the first question.
Thanks. I'm sorry I didn't exactly hear what the last speaker said, but I definitely heard what Dina asked, which was also like what you asked around the state of the law. And I'd say that even within the legal sphere, and of course in other parts of society, there's the decoloniality movement, decolonizing movement. And there's a strong movement around decolonizing the law and around third world approaches to international law trial. So we do have a framework with which to analyze and assess whether laws that exist or laws that are being made are actually being made in our favor. And that's one of the reasons why I spoke about the need to challenge existing legal frameworks at national, regional, continental, and even international level. And I'll give one good example, which Dereje also spoke about, and that is the work that really has been fueled by the Global South around a UN Framework Convention on Tax. And to step back and to see where this started. This started with the work of the high-level panel on illicit financial flows from Africa, where Africa sat down, consulted, reflected, researched, and set out its position on IFFs, illicit financial flows, how it defined it, and what it should do about it. And when Mbeki presented his report, President Mbeki presented his report to the AU in January of 2015, they passed an assembly declaration. So that became our law. And part of implementing the 38 Mbeki recommendations is what led the government of Nigeria and the government of Norway during their respective chairpersonships of the UN General Assembly and UN ECOSOC to push the resolution that created UN FACTI, the UN high-level panel on financial accountability, transparency, and integrity for achieving the 2030 agenda, which was the equivalent of the Mbeki panel now at the UN level. Now, the recommendations of UN FACTI is what has now led to us working on a new UN convention. So it shows how Africa can pass its own law and common position and project it on the global level and use it to cause a change at the global level. And this should be applied in many other areas. Thanks.
Okay, so just to add, I mean, there are also other instruments, standards, and guiding principles that have been developed by the UN system. If you look at the conversation around credit rating agencies, we know that they've been unfair, they've been biased, they have non-transparent methodologies. Well, the UN Human Rights Council, as a result of those conversations that we're having on the continent and elsewhere in the Global South, has now recommended that states regulate credit rating agencies in line with human rights principle and standard, but also that Global South nations enact legislation aimed at curtailing the predatory activities of vulture funds within their jurisdictions. So just to say that, Africa is indeed shaping conversations, but the issue sometimes is that we are not capturing, these agencies accurately, and so we are not able to, share it and disseminate it and gain strength, I guess, from that for other issues.
Thank you. Just quickly, in response to the Honorable from South Africa, I'd like to support his proposal about having teams, however AfroDad and ideas would see it, whether it's, you know, the African team or also national teams to start dealing with some of these questions at a very intimate level. And also to respond to the question raised by Dina from Cameroon and, about the Africa Development Bank, I would say let's even work on local resource mobilization. Let's also have our own resources in the Africa Development Bank so that even the Africa Development Bank does not depend on external funding to fund. And therefore it will also help it to have that voice if there's that sovereignty, and including the African Union sovereignty in terms of its own budget, so that the African Union can also have a voice. And lastly, you know, on illicit financial flows, I'd like us to also add illicit mineral flows, because there are illicit mineral flows. And I think we have not quantified, and maybe we need another Mbeki commission just to focus on illicit mineral flows. And some of us, we know more about those because we come from countries that are engaged in mining, and we know how these can be stolen legally and illegally, you know, through transfer pricing or other means. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Director, you want to say something? Yeah.
No, it's not to answer non-raised questions, but no, I was, just to conclude, I was honestly surprised this morning when Professor Hilary told about the encounter between the diaspora and African heads of state about there is no thing called reparation. That means how the relationship was envisaged by the Mbekis of that time. We are independent countries. We work as development partners. This is a new epoch. So from then, transitioning to where we are now is something that should really encourage us, despite the difficulties and challenges we have. So the process of the UN Tax Convention, something that has showed me is the whole time when this issue was discussed before we came so far, the only thing that comes to their mind is about capacity building Africa. I remember the UK guy said, we've just dedicated 17 million for capacity building of African revenue authorities. Where is the problem? Why come now to all this discussion of convention? I remember when the whole thing started, I don't want to call names, but people telling us convention, UN tax convention is an illusion. The whole we can aspire to is transparency convention. And nobody believed the Africa group can lead this process to success. We were positively surprised. And as I tried to mention also earlier, it is really, you know, as somebody disappointed by what's happening on the continent, you are so joyful when you see them work together against the common challenge. So this is what should give us hope and what should also serve as a model whenever we try to confront other challenges. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And for the last question, please.
Yes, just very quickly on AfDB, the African Development Bank, to say that they already have a facility that supports state in contract negotiations, more generally, and that's the African Legal Support Facility. As to whether that facility can also be used, you know, when it comes to reparations is another issue. But certainly within the UN system, I know that there are some conversations about quantifying what Africa has lost, for slavery, after slavery, and so on and so forth. But I don't know whether, these are not yet concrete. So just to say, there are things happening in the ground, but let's just hope that they materialize.
Thank you so very much. I think we can end it here. Really thanking you, all of you. Yes.